We are live and we are back. Juliet, Alex, very excited for our quarterly report and industry deep dive here. It's really good to see you guys. It's always super fun. And as Juliet, as you were saying, this is like the one time of the quarter where I feel like I have to do a lot of homework in order to prepare for content. I mean, for guests who have listening, I always do homework and prepare for my podcast, but this one especially because there's just a lot of data pouring in. So it's great to see you guys. Maybe we can just get an update on what's going on in your guys' lives, and then we'll get into the reports. So, Juliet, how's 2024 been so far for you?
It's been great. We obviously published a book last year, which was really fun, but it was also a lot. So this year I feel more like a normal person trying to run a business and do normal person things. So it's been nice to be able to put a focus back on the ready state and continue to grow that business, and lots of travel and fun things on the horizon in the coming year. So overall, we're doing well. And the other subtext is I spend half my life spectating water polo, as my daughter is a serious competitive water polo player. So I'm either running the ready state or watching water polo is kind of what my life looks like right now.
Yeah. What position does your daughter play?
She's a goalie.
She is. Ooh,
yeah.
They're a little crazy.
Yeah. Oh, it's that's what I've learned. You have to have a very unique personality to be a goalie.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar across goalie sport. It doesn't matter whether you're lacrosse, soccer, any kind of goalie. It takes a unique person to be a goalie.
Yeah, completely. And Alex, how about you? What's been going on?
So the winter is back in Jackson after spring was here for a few weeks, and the winter kind of got off to a slow start. So I'm not unhappy to have a little more winter time, but on the business side, I'm really happy with how my investments are going, and I haven't. I've been slow to commit to any new deals, but I'm looking at a lot of really interesting things, and I feel like we're still in a bit of a post-COVID transitional period, and things are settling down, but not altogether clear where the growth vectors are. And so that's what I'm focused on, and it's always fun, even if I'm not writing as many checks as I'd like to.
What about you, Eric? Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's been a fun quarter so far. So I went to 2 industry events, Connected Health and Fitness, both in LA, which anyone who knows me knows it's not my favorite place to visit, but if that's where the conferences are, I'll go. It's fine. So yeah, Connected Health and Fitness, which was excellent. Kudos, hats off to that crew at Casako Research for putting that together. Very well curated, very high level. I know Alex, you go to that a lot, but oh yeah, we saw each other there. Yeah, we hung out quite a bit. I got to hang out with Alex. It was amazing.
That was good.
And then URSA, now Health and Fitness Association, last month in LA as well. And I think those kind of bleed into our conversation is like, overall, I think the optimism in fitness, health, and wellness industries is really high. I think it's very energetic. I can't say from the trade floor at URSA that there was anything that blew my mind. I think there was a really strong emphasis on recovery, especially recovery products and things like that. So that was what I saw. But it seemed like a lot of business was getting done, which was really good. And that was pretty exciting. And then other than that, Podcast Collective, working on that, and working on media and PR strategies for a lot of cool brands in the industry. So it's been very busy, and looking into what we have to talk about today. Everything's on topic, everything's on point, I think, for our conversation. So, this is what we're going to cover today, and then we'll dive into the first section. But quarterly reports, Alex will add in his expertise, Lifetime, Planet Fitness, Exponential, Peloton. We're going to cover CrossFit as best we can, into the health of that brand and the gyms and our insights, having been operators there. And then we're going to wrap it up with something that's by no means no small topic, which is women's health and fitness. And I think it's, between femtech, the rise of strength training with women, all the wearable technologies that we have now, it's very exciting. And I think that's probably the most well, probably top three biggest growth opportunities within our industry. So that being said, let's kick it off. Alex,
Sure.
we have these 4 quarterly reports that we're going. Which one would you like to start with?
So I'm going to start with exponential. And the story of 2023 was a wild ride. The stock hit a high of 34 in 23, and recently has been as low as 8. So that's a lot of volatility for a fitness company, which has performed well, has had growing EBITDA, growing revenue, and a lot of drama, which we covered in a previous episode. It's currently trading around 16, so it's making, I'd say, a bit of a bounce back. It's up about 24% year to date, which is really respectable, better than the S&P, but it is down 45% versus a year ago. So that's a lot of movement in the stock, and we'll see. We're kind of waiting on a few things. The SEC is investigating franchisee controversies and some, who knows what else they're investigating. But there were some Bloomberg reports about franchisee disenchantment, and so the SEC is digging into that. We don't know where that's going or if it's going anywhere. They grew 30% in 2023 on the top line, added 550 units. I mean, that's spectacular. Their 2024 projection is a little less than that, but still about 550 units, so almost the same. And revenue is supposed to grow healthily again. The other news, they sold their running brand. I guess that didn't pan out. And they bought I guess, longevity weight loss brand called Lindora. Which is, I don't think that's huge news, but it just shows you it's a portfolio of brands. They'll buy and sell depending on what is performing and what isn't. So you got to give credit to the CEO for bouncing back and staying in the ring. He's gotten hit pretty hard on a bunch of fronts, and he seems to be counterpunching. So good for him. Any questions on that one?
Well, I guess it was interesting to me. Stride, I believe, was a running brand, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious your guys' thoughts on, like, when you look at boutique, like the single modality boutiques, right? Like a Stride or a Row House or things that's like all they do. I think Stretch Lab is an anomaly, just because it complements so many other things. But what do you think there's a future for single modality boutique gyms?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about this a lot as in the CrossFit context in particular. I think there was this time where, you could just assume people would belong to CrossFit and not want anything else. And now I think with so many options out there and the possibility of things like Class Pass, I think people want to be able to pop around and do different things. And I don't know, this is just completely anecdotal, but I've been to 2 cities where next to my hotel was an out of business City Row. I think those things are called City Row. And I had that thought. I just thought, is it just too specialized to really be viable? I don't know. I guess one question I had is, and I don't know this, if you're a member of one exponential boutique brand, can you utilize the others, or is it just a drop-in model? Do they have I actually don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, I know they have, and I don't know the details, and maybe you do, Alex, but XPass is something. Right. I'm not too sure if that's still at the forefront, but that was the, kind of like their version of
the original vision
network. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that's at now, but I know it at least existed at one point.
Yeah, because that makes it more, because I think I don't know how just like a rowing, for example, rowing specific gym could ever survive, because I just don't know that many people just want to row 6 days a week. But man, if you can row and do yoga and get stretched and, that seems
Well,
cool.
yeah, I mean, the
Viable.
challenge, I
Yep.
imagine the challenge, and I don't know, but like having, considering like they're different they're franchisees, right? So they're not corporately owned. So to pull something off like that, I imagine some people are going to be happy, some people are going to be upset. So I don't know how you would please everyone in a scenario like that, but from a high level, from the consumer standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even when I owned a CrossFit gym, we hated ClassPass and we never joined on to ClassPass because it was we could charge a $30 drop in and we would make $5 per class on a class. I mean, it was such a gouge to let people use ClassPass. But I totally see the truth of it, right? Like you see the truth of it from the consumer perspective and from the franchise owner, licensing owner of CrossFit. You're like, oh, doesn't really make sense financially. So I don't know how they figure that out.
Yeah, the brilliance of what Exponential has done is the portfolio. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're
Yeah.
not totally dependent on any one modality. But I agree from the customer user point of view, the XPass is, if they could make that work, then you get access to 10, 11, 12 brands pretty seamlessly. I mean, kind of a passport type membership, which maximizes results, convenience, variety. Yeah, no, I think they're trying to do it. They don't disclose a lot of information about that part of the business. So you don't get a sense of what percent of people are using XPass, how much cross utilization there is among the brands. They don't disclose that. So I don't have a lot of hard data on that, unfortunately.
Which report do you want to hit up next, Alex?
All right. So the next one I want to talk about is Lifetime. And they've also had sort of a bit of a wild ride on their stock price, from a high of 22 to a low of 11. And again, good growth, good profitability growth, good revenue top line growth. And today they're sitting at around 15. So they're pretty much flat for the year, and flat for the last 12 months. So I think, the big picture for me with Lifetime is they have a lot of cash flow, but their capital expenditures are just, eating up all their cash flow. Basically, they spend so much money building new units, and maintaining hundreds of units. They have 100, I think 175, units, which are, probably 120,000 square feet with pools and, tennis courts and
Yeah, like
fitness floor.
beautiful locker rooms. They're fancy. They're fancy.
Yeah, and food and beverage. And so, just on the capital expenditure side, to maintain all of that is hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they want to add 10, 12 units a year. That's hundreds of millions of dollars as well. So at the end of the day, yeah, they make 500, 600 million of cash flow, but they use it all, reinvesting it and paying their interest on their debt. And so to me, the buzzword for them is, it's all about free cash flow. Are they going to have free cash flow that they can use, to buy back stock, to pay dividends, to do something for their shareholders, basically, because they take, I think I said this last time, they take great, care of their members. They really do have a luxury, incredibly customer centric model. But they're not really taking care of their shareholders. So, the first quarter, I don't think they're expecting free cash flow, but I think in the second quarter they are. So that'll be a real sign if they can generate it, at reasonable levels, not, $1 million, but hopefully, a lot more than that. Then I think the Wall Street will be happier. The analysts will be happier, and maybe the stock will, perform better. They went public at 18 in 2021, and they're now at 15. So it has not been a good, 3 years. But they're expecting growth of around 12% on the top line in 2024, which is down from, I think, 22% in 23. So I guess they're slowing down a little bit on the growth side, and maybe that'll translate into, the cash flow I was talking about and a bump to the stock price. And the other thing that I was really impressed with, from this quarter's release was, the CEO mentioned the attrition rate is around 29% annually. So that's 2.4% average a month of attrition, which is phenomenal. I mean,
Phenomenal.
he said that in the Q&A. It's not written anywhere. So, that's what I got from the transcript of the Q&A. But that is really impressive, for a gym to have
that's
that
membership
level.
churn.
Yeah, that's churn, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that, right?
Per month.
Yeah.
2.4%. The industry average is probably in the gym business is probably 4%. There are some outliers that, the traditional Globo Gym world is probably 4%. CrossFit looked like it was higher in the data we saw, but anyway, I thought that was really impressive, and it just shows that, their customers are engaged, they're happy, they're using, they're even in the face of price increases where they're, above $200 a month in a lot of markets, people are feeling like they're getting value and they're sticking around.
Yeah, my big takeaway was looking at, from my minimal understanding of these reports and just reading it, was everything looks really good. Why is the stock flat? Even down?
I thought that same thing. I was like, we need to have a side class with Alex again about why Wall Street does not look fondly upon these companies, because when I read the earnings reports as a layperson, I'm like, well, this looks pretty good.
Looks good.
Yeah, this looks great. Why do they hate them?
Well, in a rising interest rate environment, where you have a business that requires a lot of capital, and capital's increasing in cost, Wall Street's like, I don't love that.
That makes sense.
Let's see, what's next? How about Planet Fitness?
Yeah. So
there's a scandal. There's a scandal there as well. So that's always fun.
The what?
There's a scandal as well.
Yeah. You saw that they got kind of caught in the culture wars, which I hate to see, in our industry or any industry. But when business and politics and, sort of the blue versus red fight starts to affect a business, you really, I don't know. I'm a business guy. I like business.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, I just like them to be evaluated based on their profit and loss and return on equity and investment, and how they're doing as businesses, rather than whether they are taking positions on socially divisive issues. But that's the world we live in. So basically, the big story with Planet, in my view, is they don't have a CEO, right? They don't have a permanent CEO. They got rid of their longtime CEO in September, and here we are in, at the end of March, April, and they haven't found a replacement yet. So what's up with that? It's, I've always thought that, I've sort of recognized that our industry doesn't have a deep pool of executive talent. I mean, it's a smallish industry. It's pretty niche and pretty unique in terms of how, how clubs, the ecosystem of a club is just different. I mean, you can look at other service type businesses and, restaurants and hotels and, and say, oh, well, that's a service business. Maybe, you could get people there, or, hire from within the industry, but it's a small industry. So anyway, so no permanent CEO. I think that's a challenge because I think the company, is, they've really milked the model that they have now for 30 years and it's worked great.
Yeah.
But you look around at other high volume, low price models like Crunch, like EOS, and you say, okay, well, they seem to be, really growing nicely, and they're doing things a little differently, right? They have a little more Group X. It's a little bit more of a full service model. But anyway, they're trading at around $61 a share. They're down 17% year to date, and 20% over the last 12 months. So they're coming back up a bit, but they're slowing down new club growth in 24. They're looking at about 120 to 130 new clubs, which is down from 165. So, not that significantly down, but I think they're in a bit of a transition, but they can't really transition the model until they get a new CEO. So I think that's the headline.
Alex, do you think in order for them to survive, they have to evolve and start adding Group X and trying to be a little more current? Because I do think when I see, I mean, and we've talked about this before, I'm always like shocked and a fan of Planet Fitness and I want them to succeed, even though it's not necessarily my vibe. But do you think, but it also doesn't always feel very current to me as a place to go. Do you think that that's going to only become more stark as time passes, and if they don't evolve, they're going to be in trouble?
I think it's a really strong company. So I don't know that they're facing an existential challenge, but if they want to continue to grow, I do think that the model needs to evolve. And to evolve the model, a model is not that's as well established as that one is not easy at all, right? I mean, it's a very low employee payroll model, and just a low operating, challenge. I mean, just a really simple model to operate. So as soon as you start adding things, it gets more complicated. It changes. Would they be better off doing a different brand? Adding another brand? I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
well, how about Peloton? The always the bell of the ball.
Save it for last.
There's always interesting stuff.
The good to not so good. So yeah, I hate to end on a sour note, but so Peloton is stuck, kind of stuck in the mud. Their stocks, they closed today at $4.40. It's down 28% year to date, down 55% over the last 12 months. Revenue was down in the last quarter. So, the other three companies we talked about are growing. Peloton is not. We talked last time about this sort of identity crisis around the company. Like, it wants to be a growth company, but it isn't a growth company anymore. It doesn't mean it couldn't be a growth company again, but that's not what it is today. And I don't know that they've figured out how to turn the engine back on, the growth engine back on. They introduced a rowing machine. They introduced the guide. They reintroduced the treadmill. They tried to kind of transition from hardware to mainly digital, and de-emphasize hardware, but that doesn't seem to have, generated any growth. I think the CEO continues to emphasize growth. And when you look at his letter to the shareholders, the word growth is all over the place. It's 20, 30 times, used that many times. So the mindset is we want to be a growth company. But the numbers are saying you're not a growth company right now. So I think that's what Wall Street is saying to themselves. Like, we're not buying that Peloton is going to get back on the growth trajectory anytime soon. Is a CEO change in the offing? I have no inside information, but if I think that the CEO has done a great job sort of fixing all the issues that the previous CEO had created. So they've really stabilized the business. He's done a great job doing that. But when he started, the stock was at $39 a share, and now it's at $4.40. 2 years later, I mean, that's a pretty tough record to be standing on. But to me, if the board and the CEO just said, okay, we're gonna stop emphasizing growth. We're going to focus on the strengths of the business, the loyalty of the members, the bike, the content that we're delivering. The churn rate is 1.2%. The loyalty is just off the charts. So, I think if they did that, stop spending money on chasing growth and chasing innovation, like their R&D budgets are $80 million a quarter. What are they spending that money on? Like, that's just nuts. And they have no, there's no evidence that their innovation is actually leading to growth, right? If you look at the products that they've introduced. So anyway, that's I think the CEO could, if the strategy changed, I think he could execute it really well. And I think it could be a very profitable business, albeit not a growth business, pretty quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed from just having, it's only been the past half year, a little longer, that I've been reading these, and we talked about this last time, but like every time I read these reports, I feel like their strategy is like a bit whack-a-mole. Like, let's try these partnerships, and now we've got this treadmill, and now we're going to be doing this thing. And it's really just from an outsider's perspective, having my first look into the business at this particular time, I just don't see a clear strategy. There's not this, it still feels like they've got the treadmill and they're working on this, and, they jettisoned their university plan. And, so it just seems like they're sort of like trying this plug and play model, like, let's see what works, versus just doubling down on what they know works, which is the bike and the digital content. Like, it just seems like that's what the brand should be. So, that's my very layperson perspective from just diving into these reports over the last 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, and I noticed, to kind of back up what you said, like, just given they did little synopses of all of their efforts
Yeah.
within this, and ones that didn't go so well, like the University of Michigan and the college initiative, right? Like, not so much. But the ones that seemed to look promising were like the retail channels, right? The rental program and the
Yep.
TikTok, which is essentially content, right? They're talking about this TikTok channel. It's like, of course you should have TikTok. Not that I've, a CEO of a company ever, but like these things that were focused on, their core bike and content, like those two things that evolved around those, they seem to do well, which, as we sit here, from a 30,000 foot view, like, not shocking, right? But
Yeah.
there's always seems to be a lack of, from the outside, a clarity of strategy for sure.
Yeah, and that TikTok thing is funny. I agree too, because when I read that, I was like, man, they are like, if they're good at one thing, it's making content. Like,
Yeah.
they've gotten really good at that. It's flashy, it's cool, it's fun. There's something for everybody. Like, they crush content. So the fact that TikTok was their strategy, I was like, wait, that wasn't their strategy like 3 years ago. That's also, the TikTok thing surprised me too. I was like, wait, what? It's perfect for TikTok. Everything they do is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, awesome. Well, Alex,
the CEO is a 70-year-old guy, right? Is that, I mean, tremendous CFO at Spotify and Netflix, and but is that the right profile for a person to figure out how to connect with, the new social media, new generations? I mean, look, that's my demographic, so I don't want to undermine it, but but I just I think that's a it goes to the same issue that I was saying with Planet Fitness. We need more executive talent in the industry. Like we just do. And I don't, I hope we're
What's the way? What's the path to that, Al? I mean, do you have do we just only continue plucking from other like industries? Like, how do we develop that? Like, how do we change that to have people who have both industry expertise and CEO expertise to plug into these roles? I mean, how do we do that?
It's a really, really great question, and I don't have an easy answer. Talk to your kids about getting into the business, and it's a generational thing, and we got to attract. I mean, we have a lot of, there are a lot of talented people. When I'm walking around the LA Connected Summit, there are a lot of smart young people in the industry, and we just got to keep encouraging them and developing them and mentoring them, and then I think it'll resolve itself, if people, if they see real opportunity. The industry has to have success stories to attract kids out of the best schools, out of the most ambitious kids. And we've had a lot of success. We had a lot of success a few years ago, and now we're a little bit kind of on our heels a bit. But I'm optimistic. I mean, there's a lot of talent out there. We just have to, keep bringing it in and keep mentoring it.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you as always for the quarterly insights on these public companies. It's really interesting, and it's it's hard to find anywhere else really within our industry people going that deep on it. So the next topic we have slated here is CrossFit. So obviously, well, not obviously, people don't know, but both Juliet and I owned CrossFit affiliates for a long time, and I think CrossFit in general is one of the biggest brands globally in fitness. And there's very little transparency for numerous reasons about how the health of the brand and the affiliates. And I think something that I'll start with this, that a lot of people don't know, not most people, a lot of people know is the affiliate model and what that means. So for, what is it? I think $3,750 or $4,000 a year now, something, give or take.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, you can essentially license the brand name. You can put it on your door, list it on Google, and then, you kind of have to stay within a little bit of parameters, but it's kind of, Greg Glassman's original, vision was to have it be very libertarian in view. Like, we're just going to open this up. We're going to let people use it. We'll give them methodology. They can take it or leave it, and we'll just see who rises to the top. And, it's worked in certain ways. In other ways, it's definitely hasn't worked. But, we did our best in getting some information from, the Two Brain Business Report. Dan Wymura, the team at Push Press, gave us some data. So we're kind of we have some, but we're kind of data blind. But I guess let's start with Juliet, your opinion, like from what we've gathered so far, how is CrossFit doing as a brand? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that I continue to be a fan of CrossFit, and above all these brands we've talked about today, I hope for its success. And I think it still stands as the most innovative thing that's happened in fitness in my lifetime anyway. And I don't know whether we'll see anything else more innovative, but it was so innovative and changed fitness. And it's why we see boutique fitness on every corner, at least where I live. So I'm just such a fan of the brand. And I agree with you. I think the licensee model of affiliates has many pros and probably also some cons. But I thought there were some reasons for optimism, because I think sometimes in the CrossFit, somehow the chatter that I hear often about CrossFit is that, people think, oh my God, Don Fall's job is impossible. How's he ever going to make it work? The fact that they had to raise affiliate fees must be a sign of imminent demise. I hear a lot of negative talk around the health of CrossFit, but in reading the Two Brain report, a couple of things stood out to me. I mean, the first was that of affiliate owners that they're surveying, there was something like almost 90% confidence that the brand was solid and going to do well and continue on. And I thought that was really great, because these are the real ultimate super users of the brand. And if they have that much confidence on an affiliate level, that shows me that, there was some initial furor about the change in affiliate fees, but I suspected that would be short-lived and it would blow over and everyone would just accept the new reality, which it seems like that's happening. And so I thought, for me, that was exciting. I felt very optimistic that affiliate owners felt that good about the brand. I will say, for my part, I've only met Don Fall once, but I like him, and I think he's really smart and really capable. And I don't envy his job. I don't even know how he, I don't know where to start. I think there's probably a lot of work to be done, but I really think he's very capable and a super nice guy, and actually really does understand the CrossFit community. So I think he's so far, in my view, been a net positive for the company. And then there are a couple of things that I took away. I mean, this, Eric, from owning an affiliate. I mean, even, we closed our affiliate in 2020, but up until that point, I mean, we basically didn't do any marketing and didn't have to do any marketing. And I do think that's one thing that's a changed landscape. I think, in part because of the commoditization of boutique fitness and fitness generally. I think you can no longer own an affiliate, a successful affiliate, just based on word of mouth. I think you actually really need to run it like a real business with a serious marketing plan. So I think that's, shockingly, I think we were able to run these affiliates for years without having to do much in the way of marketing. And then the only thing that I thought was a bummer was the data about how just the overall revenue of most of the CrossFit gyms, and particularly for the owners. It's a hard business to make a living. And, one of the things I always used to advise potential CrossFit gym owners is, like, under no circumstances should you take on a partner, because at the most a CrossFit gym can support a single person, definitely not a partnership. But yeah, just to see that, the average CrossFit gym owner is making less than $4,000 a month. And in many cases, probably quite a bit less than that. That was a little bit of a bummer. I thought, man, we're still at the place where probably a lot of CrossFit gym owners need to have a side job to be able to make it, and especially in the more expensive markets. So So overall, I was excited by what I saw from the limited data we can get. And anecdotally, I talked to 4 or 5 gym owner friends of mine who felt like, optimistic as well. They felt like they had waded through the horror of the pandemic and that their gyms were, growing at, not huge rates, but they were back to growing and they were excited about the future. So I think overall it's positive. And I hope that we can get to a place where, you know, um, gym owners can make a living doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you look at the CrossFit community, and I'll list off some insights from Push Press here in a second, just to give some data to people. But if you've never been to a CrossFit event, then you don't know yet what passion about the industry means. Like, we are talking about people who are diehard fitness and health. Like, I can't even describe it until you go to like the CrossFit Games. Oh my God. Like, these are some of the fittest, craziest about fitness people you will ever meet. If you go to, like, my wife still CrossFits religiously 3-4 times a week. She goes to the 5:15 a.m. class. And, it's the same group of people she sees all the time. Like, that's commitment. And the gym owner I know that she goes to, like, talk to him periodically at different events and things like that. Like, it, he's not making a ton of money. Luckily, he has a physical therapy clinic, right? I've never seen his P&L, but, he runs a physical therapy clinic on the side. And I think that tends to be the model that works the best. And, for good or bad, for like trade-offs, when you look at the models, the good is like the barrier to entry is super low, right? You could have theoretically $15,000-$20,000, right? And you can license the CrossFit name. You could start a gym. You could be in business in 2 months, right? Like, where else can you do that and have a brand that's recognized? So the value there, the downside of that is, like, there's no structure set up for marketing, best practices, business, membership pricing, like all the things you would get from, corporately owned or a franchise. And, so here's some of the stuff that I thought was interesting. So Push Press, to give people an idea, Push Press mostly is a CRM that mostly works with independent gym owners. So they don't do a lot of franchises. They cover a lot of CrossFit, a lot of martial arts, a lot of just kind of like those ones you drive by all the time, like the personal
Strength
training
and
studios.
conditioning gyms, those kind of
Yes.
places. Yep.
So they have, so they said in general, CrossFit gyms have more members than non-CrossFit gyms, like, of their platform, right? CrossFit gyms on PushPress generate more revenue than non-CrossFit gyms. The top 20% revenue generating gyms are majority CrossFit, but this number is declining over time. The top 5% revenue generating gyms are split 50-50 CrossFit and non-CrossFit. We don't know what non-CrossFit is specifically, but this number again is declining. Looking at smaller gyms, the bottom 80%, CrossFit is handily better than non-CrossFit. So I don't know what that means in handily, but we could go back and look at the graphs and we could share this stuff too. But it's just some general insights. And I think something that was really encouraging too from the Two Brain report was that average number of members has increased, so 3.2% year over year. So 159 members in 2023 on average compared to 152 in 2022. Now, even to me, that number seems kind of high, to be honest with you, from the gyms that I've met with and I've worked with in the past. So it's interesting. It seems that here's a funny thing. I don't know if you guys caught this one, but the biggest growth sector, and this is from Two Brain, was in the EU, but the worst was in UK. So maybe Brexit didn't work for CrossFit. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, I said this a little bit, but I have to just say it again. Like 87% of respondents are confident about the future of the brand. That's from the Two Brain report. And that was such a standout for me. The other piece of anecdotal information I got from a couple of gym owner friends, and then this was reflected, I think, also in the Two Brain report, is the commoditization piece. And especially when it comes to pricing. I actually just talked to a friend of mine who has a gym in Minnesota, and, he is, in a wealthier suburb, and I think charges $200 a month for his membership, but he has found that to be a struggle because now there's an F45 and there's some other, Barry's and some other gyms that are something like $99 a month. And so I do think that, I mean, when we closed San Francisco CrossFit, it was $300 a month. And granted, that's a different, that's a specific market. But I wonder if we were still open today, whether we would also be feeling some push to lower those prices to be competitive with like the berries and the F45s that are around us. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
So if you two were advising the new CEO, what on how to what strategy to pursue over the next few years, what would your advice be?
Well, I shouldn't say this because I'm probably going to get hate on this, but actually I met with Don Fall a couple years ago, and I was a fan of raising affiliate fees and suggested as much back then. I will say that we were one of the first CrossFit gyms to open. We had been grandfathered in for all these years at $500 a month. And I certainly think the brand needs to provide value and make the affiliates feel like they are getting value for that affiliate fee. But what really made me think about it is over the years, I have joined a variety of different like business masterminds, mentorship groups, and you name it. And I mean, the floor of pricing for those groups is $15,000 a year. That's the floor. And I thought to myself, man, like I'll toss down $15,000 to join this who knows what mentor group to hopefully get mentoring or business advice. And yet I'm squawking about having to pay $3,000 or $4,000 to put the CrossFit name on my gym. I think that it's well worth the $3,000 or $4,000 people are paying for it. I think it. Obviously, there's some challenges with the brand name, and I think sometimes people have strong feelings and they're often positive or negative about the brand, but it's still, they have a feeling about it. And I think that has value. So I was a fan of that change. I think they had to do that. And so I think that's one area. And I do think they need to continue to create value and support affiliates, in exchange for that price.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I was totally on board with the price or the increase in the affiliate fees. I mean, it's so like, if you look at how big the brand is, it's still a drop in the bucket of what it is. But I think what gets lost a lot is in the mix of what the world of CrossFit is the affiliate owner. Like just even, and I'm not complaining, but it was tough, like running the CrossFit Open, which was this global thing, and how many hours I put into like gamifying it within my gym, and like extra hours being there at night, running all weekend, like
Friday
for
Night
6
Lights.
weeks. Hated it. I hated it. I loved it and I hated it. I was all about that. So I think the affiliate owner gets lost in the mix, and I think they could do a better job of at least creating roadmaps, because I could tell you this, like, people will spend in CrossFit a ton of money on certifications for coaching, right? Like, powerlifting, gymnastics, right? Nutrition, like you name it, they will spend thousands and thousands of dollars. But when it comes to business, everybody's like, ooh, I don't want to do that. That's not fun, right? So I think, and that's just generalizing, but I think having a better roadmap for like, how do we monetize the brand at the affiliate level, similar to what you're saying, Juliet, would be really good. And I don't know what that looks like, but having someone dedicated at a senior level within CrossFit to just do that, I think would be really beneficial. So that's my 2 cents.
And I have one other thought too. You reminded me about this by mentioning the certifications, though. We actually had a great talk with a guy on our podcast about how the era of certifications really ended, it seemed, and in-person certifications kind of ended in 2015 when CrossFit ended their SME program, of which, my husband Kelly was a part. He was the mobility SME for many, many years and traveled all over the world. And I think that part of their business is a big loss. I mean, we know, when we we were paying a percentage of our door fees to CrossFit during that time. And I remember when they ended the program, we did a loose calculation, and just our SME program was bringing in like $500,000 a year to CrossFit in revenue from, because we had a whole team. We had Kelly and like 9 other coaches cruising all over the country teaching CrossFit certification courses, and all that was really driven by this robust SME program they did. And I think it gave a lot of credibility as well to CrossFit, and I think did some good towards counteracting some of the negative feelings towards CrossFit, because they had the best of the best out there underneath their brand out there teaching courses. And I know that was a huge revenue stream for CrossFit. And they just ended it in, I don't know, 2016, 2017. And I think they should bring that back. I mean, not necessarily with us, but with whoever's the latest and greatest SME on subjects, and start trotting those people back out in the world, because I think post-pandemic, people are ready to in-person learn and be with people again. So I don't know, again, because we don't have any insight, but I think that SME program was a big revenue stream for them for a lot of years. And I don't think they're really, they have their own level 1s, level 2 programs. I'm sure they make some money off of those, but I think they've made a lot of money off those SME programs. I would say they should bring them back.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, maybe one of the last things on is like, for the purist of CrossFit, this may be offensive at worst, but like, here's the thing: is CrossFit in its current form, for most gyms, is an advanced training protocol. Like it is. We're talking Olympic weightlifting, gymnastics. Like this isn't off the couch type stuff. And there was always this thing like, we can take anyone, right, and put them into CrossFit classes, and they'll be fine. And I could tell you right now, like people get hurt. It happens, it does happen. And that's something that I think needs to be kind of more openly discussed within the community about like, well, how do we maybe start people at a different level? Do we want like either be 100%, this is advanced training, like this is where you go when you kind of graduated out of Orange Theory, or stop saying that's for everybody, because it's kind of not. And I've heard Kelly say this, numerous times. Your husband is like, CrossFit's not for everybody. We just need to be honest about it. No. Like it's not. So I think they need some messaging, and maybe that's where it comes down from the executive suite at CrossFit HQ is like, how do we communicate better? Who is our target audience really? And if we want to be open to beginners and people off the couch, and how do we maybe come up with specialty programs for them to welcome them into the community in a safe and effective way? So that would be my only other suggestion if they're listening.
So
yeah, we actually oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, no. From the outside looking in, the affiliate doesn't have a territory. Is that correct? They just they could be competing with somebody who's three blocks away. So
I had one 100 feet away.
Could that change? I mean, could they go towards a more traditional geographic, licensing or franchising type arrangement? Would that be?
I think that couldn't be a greater suggestion. I think every CrossFit affiliate, and I don't know if they're doing that now, but every CrossFit affiliate, and the whole time I was involved in CrossFit was just shy of 20 years, you live in sort of a constant state of fear, because, coaches leave and you spend a ton of time training them, and they all of course always think they can do a better job, and it's natural for them to want to own their own gyms and move around, but you live in this like constant state of fear as an affiliate owner that you're going to spend 5 years training up a coach, and they're going to go 2 blocks away and open a CrossFit, and that happens all the time. And it's just, I mean, so in terms of like creating goodwill amongst affiliate owners and like helping them bring their blood pressure down a little bit as business owners, that would be like the greatest thing they could do, because it's caused so much stress, so many broken relationships, so much unnecessary pain. And I think it wasn't great for the brand ultimately. I don't think, the cream rises to the top concept really worked that well in that model, because no matter what, it was going to dilute. It diluted.
From a sort of cynical business perspective, if, CrossFit headquarters is making money based on how many new units are opening, then they don't want any exclusive geography, exclusive territory.
Right.
They have no economic incentive. So now if they're in a world where there aren't a lot of people trying to open new CrossFit boxes, then they could go back to the existing healthy operators and say, we're going to now give you a territory, but the affiliate fees are going to go up a bit.
Yep. And
Good
I think
work.
that's a good trade-off. I mean, after living within that with that constant fear for years of like who's going to open next door, man, I would have paid like 20 grand a year to just take that off my plate and know that I had this territory and I could own it. Man, that would
Yeah.
be worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it.
Yeah.
I don't know about, do you feel the same way, Eric? I mean, you had one,
Oh yeah.
you actually had it happen to you. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was constant fear. I mean, there was, I would have people who were my trainees, like, I coached them. And then next thing you know, I hear whispers that they're opening a gym 3 blocks away and they're offering my members, buy one, get two. So for memberships, like bring one CrossFit Pacific Coast person over and get another person for free. That was literally their marketing to get their gym off the ground. And that was just, what are you going to do? Like, besides walk over there and have a stern conversation about like, please stop what you're doing.
yeah, right.
There was nothing you could do. And that happened over and over and over again. You coach someone up, and bring them up within your business, and then they go and open it up. Eventually I was just like, well, I expect that to happen after 2 years. So I'm just continually filling the funnel with coaches or GM type people to help. So what are you going to do? That's just the model.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move over to the last and certainly not least biggest topic of women's health. I think there's a lot to talk about. We probably have about 15 minutes to get it done, but gosh, I mean, here's what the research I started looking at was, I want to give some credit to Helene at wild.ai, the team at Aura got some good information over to us. But you look at like a femtech and a wearable side of things for like health and some of the innovation that's going on there. You look at the boom of women in strength training, which is super exciting for everybody involved, I think. So yeah, I have a bunch of stuff to read off and stats and all that good stuff. But let's start with Juliet, give us your opinion on the state of women's health and fitness, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I am stoked. I was just speaking at LinkedIn the other day and on a panel, and someone said, "What are you excited about?" And my answer was women's sports. And I mean, at the top of that list is Caitlin Clark from University of Iowa, who's just been like a total joy, and everything about her and what's happened with her trajectory has been so fun to watch. And then there's the pro stadium in Kansas City. So I just feel like we're just at the very tip of like some very cool stuff happening in women's sports. So that I'm really excited about. And I just think that, it's happening, and that's very cool to see. Super curious to see whether the NIL stuff makes a splash in women's sports like it is in men's sports in college. I'm, interested to see what happens there. I love that more women are getting into strength training. I still think there's a lot of work to be done there because I use my own community as like an N of one non-science anecdotal evidence. And I think I still see a lot of women struggling with that. And I still see a lot of like, mediocre advice online, like, hey, put your treadmill up to a hill and that's strength training. And I get a little like, oh, okay, well, I mean, sort of, but not really. But I'm very excited about all these trends in women. And then the other one too, I think you shared a little bit of data about this, Eric, in one of the things we shared in advance. And I don't know if it's because this is my demographic, a menopausal 50-year-old woman, but it is very cool to see there seems to be a gigantic push towards better women's health care, specifically in perimenopause and menopause care. I think there's a big acknowledgement that subset of women has been like totally ignored, left behind, gaslit by the, traditional medical community. There seems to be a lot of voices in the mix. Stacey Sims and Dr. Mary Claire and others. There's obviously, these femtech businesses like Alloy, and there's just some really cool stuff happening. And the thing that makes me so excited about is that, I think it's really going to help those of us that are currently in these age demographics. But I have 2 daughters, and I think, man, like this is going to be so awesome for them. Like they're going to grow up in a world where like women strength train, they can go watch women's professional sports. Maybe my water polo playing daughter can get some NIL money as a college athlete. And like, maybe they will just ultimately have better access to healthcare in many ways because of this, newfound, focus on it. And I will say sometimes I hate social media, and I think it's the demise of our society. But man, on this women's health thing, I think social media has been a huge, huge positive. I see so many women sharing stories about getting gaslit by their physicians and finding supportive communities online on social media. And there's just a lot going on there that is, I'm just pumped about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I'll give some information on a second, but Alex, give your take on that.
Yeah. So no, I agree on the women's sports front. The progress that's being made is just leaps and bounds. And I was, there's still a long way to go, but
Yeah.
when you look at what the women did, in the soccer federation, what the value of the soccer franchises, the women's soccer franchises, the increase in attendance, the increase in TV money. I'm just, focused on soccer because I just happen to have looked at that. I'm sure it's happening elsewhere. Maybe in basketball, maybe in hockey, maybe. But when I look at the fitness industry, I think back, I've been in the industry 40 years now, which is crazy, but we were always pretty much around 50-50 in terms of our membership. Because we were, kind of a multi-purpose gym with a lot of group X and, and the traditional strength training and cardio. And then I think about boutique studios, which are primarily female. There may be some, boxing, maybe not, or, but a lot of them are certainly, I'd say 70-80% probably female customers, members. So I feel like the industry has been pretty good at being balanced gender-wise, but not so much in leadership, in the executive, suites. And you look at, we talked about Peloton, right? We talked about Planet Fitness. The guy running Planet Fitness now, it is, well, I'm not gonna talk about age, but male running Planet Fitness, male running Lifetime, male running Peloton, male running Equinox. So we're kind of, I think we're serving the genders pretty well. Or I don't think we're underserving the women's population. But we got to do better, I think, in the executive suites. And I hold myself responsible for that too, because when I was CEO, I my wife would constantly remind me, like, where are all the women? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So what do we?
Yeah, and women on those boards, right? Even if they're not in the CEO position, like did those,
Yeah.
I've never looked, but like did those companies, I mean, I know Peloton does because I actually happen to know a female board member of Peloton personally, but
Yeah.
I don't know about the other companies, right? Like who do they have on their boards?
Yeah.
Who's sitting on their boards?
Yeah, I think their boards are probably, or they probably do have a little bit more diversity.
Yeah, that's great.
But the CEO jobs.
Well, allow me to throw some one-liners out there on women's health and fitness, because I thought that was pretty interesting. And so Wild.ai, this is Elaine, she brought some really interesting, and this is stuff I've seen, in many conversations I've had on this podcast too, is 80% of medical research, and this is still today, is focused on men. When it comes to sports, it's worse. Only 6% of budgets go to women's research. So that's kind of like the state of things, right? Minimum 50% of female athletes self-report performance being impacted by their menstrual cycle, but many of them don't know how to navigate that. 76% of women report side effects due to hormonal contraceptives, lower libido, depressive symptoms, mood swings, etc. 85% of women experience physical and psychological menopausal symptoms. for 7+ years. So stuff like weight gain, lower libido, memory loss, issues falling asleep, joint pain, things like that. But here's where things are starting to swing up, right? More investment, right? Things like we were talking about the Kansas City Current, right? Their stadium being built specifically for women's sports. Pretty cool, right?
So
That's
cool. It's so
first of
cool.
its kind. Women's life stages seem to be not really a complete blocker in performance for sports anymore. So Megan Rapinoe at 38, Kitty Ledecky, Allison Felix in track and field, Shelly Ann Fraser Price, pregnancy and her career. So things are really starting to open up and the conversation is becoming very mainstream. And I think that's where, you really start to get some traction on it. And so there's a lot of stuff. And I thought there was an interesting study going on right now. A report will be released, I think, in a month or two with Aura and UCSF.
Yeah, that was really
right?
interesting.
So specifically on, polycystic ovarian syndrome, like using wearable data to predict things like that, or, how to navigate their menstrual cycles for numerous reasons, menopause, perimenopause, all this stuff, all these tools and research are going to come in to help women specifically kind of navigate these phases or challenges within their specific health issues, right? So it's really, really cool to see all this research being dumped in and this new focus. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, any thoughts on that, in those particular?
I mean, I think that's super cool. And I would add to the life stages of women, the more and more very public women who are having kids during their athletic career. I mean, there's some super notable CrossFit people like Kara Saunders and Tia Toomey and Annie Torresdottir. I know that is across many other sports too. And you can see that there's still a level of discomfort on Instagram. As people watch those women continue to train through pregnancy, you can see that 50% of the people are like, yes, this is amazing, and 50% of the people still find it uncomfortable and awkward to watch a pregnant woman exercise. But I still think that's really interesting, and again, another prop to CrossFit. It's that community has definitely been really open. And I'm sure it's not without challenge, of course. And I don't know what it's like for those women with their sponsors and so forth, but it seems like generally speaking, they've had a positive experience being able to, pop out for a year and have a kid and come back into training and be seriously competitive with, support of their sponsors and major organizations. And I think that's really also another positive change. And, again, long way to go. Like Alex said, still a long ways to go. But it feels like we're sort of at the beginning of a cascade of really positive things that are happening for women in sport and women in fitness. And, Alex, let's try to plop some female CEO into one of those 4 companies. Like, wouldn't that be great if we could talk about that in one of our upcoming sessions?
Yeah. How do you feel about women's only boutiques or gyms, or is that something you endorse, or you think it's not really necessary?
Man, I struggle with that one because I have been in gyms my whole life and feel comfortable in gyms. Even like Iron Pit Bro gyms. I've spent time in some of those as well. But I do know that gyms still are intimidating for a lot of women. And so I wonder if there still isn't a sliver of the population that would never go to any kind of gym or boutique fitness kind of club thing without there being only women there. I don't know. I don't know because my own experience is so different. What do you think? I mean, do you think there's a market for that?
I have been skeptical of it in my career in the industry. I've seen that, there's one group out of Boston called HealthWorks that's been really successful on a small scale, but they're still around. As far as I know, they're doing really well. I don't know how many units they have. It's a multi-purpose gym. I've talked to some entrepreneurs who are thinking about boutiques that are really designed to address women's health issues in sort of middle age and older. I see P-Volve. That is, I don't know if they're exclusively female, but it certainly seems like that's the the marketing image or the positioning. So I'm on the fence about it, but I do think that if you really want to program specifically for women's issues on a very personalized, sort of targeted basis, it's got to be female run. I don't. I mean, that sounds wrong, but or female directed. You got to have expertise.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think maybe the better model there is just private coaching, private training is the model. I mean, to me, that's the model, right? Especially for people who really want that kind of specific training. I also sometimes, and
that's very
it's expensive, and I'm super pro women, but I will, for some reason, it made me think about the massive number of people who've come up to me over the years who want sports specific training specifically for their kids. And to that, Kelly and I always say, everybody's weak and sucks at everything. What are you talking about? Like, your 15-year-old son can't squat, press, deadlift, isn't fast, not agile, isn't mobile. Like, what are we even talking about? Like, your kid doesn't need some weightlifting move that's for baseball. And I think generally speaking, that's most humans, right? Like, we all have sort of a lot of 20 basic things we should be doing with our bodies. But yeah, I agree. It's not accessible in a private training model. I think my bias too is like, I'm of the curves generation, right? You remember curves? And I definitely was not a curves kind of person. So when you say female only gym, unfortunately, what I think, like, that immediately brings curves to mind, which I think, oh, nope, I'm not into curves.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't say I'm on board with the full brick and mortar only women or only men or only whatever, right? I think that's counterproductive in some cultural ways, but I do believe, like, I would like to see, women focused classes, right? Or specific segments, just like you would have a class specific to football players. You could have one specific to an age group of women who are dealing with the same challenges, right? Or parts of their, time of their life. So, or whatever it may be. I think that's a good way to do it. You can still do the group. And I mean, all in all, I think small group training is the best out there for numerous reasons. But that's not always affordable and accessible for everybody. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Well, you guys, we probably, I could talk forever with you guys, but we should probably wrap this one out. I want to throw one more statistic out there because I thought it was interesting. Okay, on women's strength, and like you said before, Juliet, like social media I'm not always a big favorite, but this case, it's pretty clear. The hashtag Girls Who Lift has garnered over 10 billion views. Probably more now because the Skim report came out in 2020. Videos of weightlifting women have racked over 60 million views, and lifting girl videos have accumulated over 13 million views. So social media, as much as we hate to say it, the social media influencer in the fitness industry is actually making a positive difference.
Yep.
And you got to give a little bit of kudos to that.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. That's very cool. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts on everything that we covered today? Alex, how about you?
I am going to predict that we're going to have some more IPOs, and I don't have any specific information, but I'm sort of feeling like there are some companies that are positioning for IPOs over the next, I don't know, say 18 months. It could be the Orange Theory Anytime Group. It could be Equinox. It could be, So those are a couple that I think, I think it'd be great for the industry to have those that level of quality company get out onto the public market.
Awesome. And Juliet, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I did all of my homework for this and felt a very cool sense of optimism. Even for the public companies, which Wall Street doesn't like as much, maybe not Peloton as much, but the other ones, for sort of the future of CrossFit affiliates and the brand generally. And then, I mean, obviously could not be more excited about what's happening with women's sports and women's fitness. And, obviously there's work to do in all of those areas, but I think we have a lot of reason for optimism and feeling like, we're starting to do good work and are doing good work. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I can't wait already for our next one. We'll, over the next few weeks, we'll start deriving our next plan of attack on what topics we want to do. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us all on LinkedIn or social media, and it's not hard to find. So Juliet, Alex, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks,
That is
Eric.
a wrap.
Thank you, Eric.